Hello everyone, just going to share some of my thoughts about episode 100 for Person of Interest. So there are spoilers ahead because there's really no way to avoid that given what's happening. We're getting very close to the finale, quite possibly the series finale. So, I have to cover certain things. So for those who don't know, here comes the spoiler, Root actually dies. Well, at least in the traditional sense. She dies taking a bullet that was intended for Harold Finch while he was a passenger in a car that she was driving. There were a lot of events that happened before that, but essentially someone takes a shot, she tries to protect him, and that shot proves fatal. She doesn't die instantly, but she, I guess, is taken to the hospital, but she doesn't make it. So a lot of people are very upset by that. Another major development is that Finch sort of takes off the handcuffs. He is apprehended during all of that madness by the police, and there's a part where he's interrogated by a federal agent, but really he's irrelevant. That whole scene is to set up basically Finch in a very cold and calculating manner finally snaps. Elias, who recently returned, he takes a bullet to the head protecting Harold. And he doesn't know at that time what has ultimately happened to Root. However, you can tell he's reached his breaking point, and he's sitting there and he starts speaking to Samaritan. It's not obvious at first, but he knows the camera is watching, and he starts essentially saying how he's always played by the rules that he created for himself. He's really been the one to kind of shoulder the burden, these philosophical questions and the ramifications of certain decisions when it comes to trusting artificial intelligence and the power that you're going to give what is ultimately a very sophisticated program, yet a program nonetheless. And he talks about those rules and how hard he's tried to follow them. But he essentially realizes that there is no choice at this point. Essentially, you are now forcing me. You are forcing me to remove the limiters and go all the way with this. And he basically says, I'm going to kill you. And he's talking to Samaritan. The agent thinks it's a threat at him. And he says, but the question is, he's trying to decide how far. I have to decide how far am I willing to go to accomplish that goal. How many rules will I have to break to make that happen? And then he gets, they're about to take him back to holding. And, the guy stops. He has to go talk to someone. And the phone rings. And, of course, it's the machine because he decided that the machine could have a voice, but he would let the machine decide for itself. And of course, it has adopted the voice of Root. So, and he says, can you get me out of here? And she says, you created me. I can do anything you want me to. She kills the power to the place, and there's some mayhem, I guess, prisoners escaping, but he leaves. So essentially, now Harold has turned the corner. He's decided, I have to do whatever it takes. And a lot of people are just glossing over that. I know it's a major thing to lose Root, but I'll be honest with you. And what follows is undoubtedly an unpopular opinion. But it's an opinion from the perspective of someone who enjoyed the show from the early days. Many people assume that if you had a problem with the changes to the narrative starting in season 3, it's because you simply have a fondness for traditional CBS procedural programming. In my case, that is 100% false. Exploring the themes about the nature of sentience and the ramifications of trusting artificial intelligence, as I said, I'm with you on all of that. I love science fiction, and I have no problem with them deciding that they want to explore things and go beyond just a case of the week, focused on the numbers. This week's number is, hey, I get it. You have a much grander vision, and you kind of eased into that. But it was always about AI and the digital essence of a person or an entity and what all of this means. I get it, and I'm with you on that. But I always felt that Root became such an overbearing presence on the show. They took what was a very intriguing villain, very talented, crazy, with a very strange connection and fondness for Harold Finch and later the Machine. She worshipped the Machine. And they decided, here's the thing, right? There are interviews with Jonathan Nolan, including a recent one, which confirms Root's importance was expanded because of the actress. He loved working with Amy Acker. It's that simple. They wrote the character's arc and then decided, gosh, we love having her on set. We love her involvement so much. She's so awesome. And I understand that because I'm a big fan of her work. Don't get it wrong. I loved her work on Angel as Illyria. But what happened is the narrative was altered. The vision was altered to accommodate an increased involvement by someone that they enjoyed on a personal level. So personal feelings altered the fictional universe that the writers created. And I think that can happen at a great detriment if you don't temper that with, the proper sensibilities. Now, hey, it's their story, and that is the power of creative freedom. Okay? You have the right to tell your story how you see fit to tell it. But I feel that at times the problem with Root, at least for me, was that in order to make her shine and to give her this epic treatment, she's shooting people without even looking at them. She's doing no-look gunshots. She's beating up guys. These big burly guys approach her. She's unarmed. And next thing you know, she's knocked them unconscious and she's using their weapons against their buddies and all of that stuff. And what got me was because of her connection to the Machine, she would always see like 50 moves ahead. And even the brilliant Harold Finch, he could just sit there, nod along. Oh, well, you have a point, Miss Groves. You're just so smart and so wait, I'm just totally meaningless at this point. I guess I better do what you say, Miss Groves. I mean, it just got on my nerves. She's calling John a chimp. That works if you're a villain because the good guys can ultimately put you in your place. But when you are a member of the team, constantly condescending to people that have become very important to your existing audience. I understand that new viewers really love Root and the whole thing with Shaw, but you have to understand that people who watch from day one, the characters that they really admire and with whom they connect are people like John Reese, Harold Finch, Carter, before they offed her. So the point is that I understand you wanted to make Root relevant to the future storyline. But to me, this is a cautionary tale. It's like when parents start talking about, do you have a favorite child? There is something to be said for keeping everything in place in the proper perspective for your entire world. When you become obsessed with one of your characters, I think it often occurs at the expense of other characters, right? Because now you've diminished Harold by making her have all the answers as this unstoppable oracle, because the Machine is giving her all of these answers and looking so many moves into the future that it diminishes Harold's impact as this, brilliant, mysterious person who kind of set the entire thing in motion. And then, of course, it diminishes Reese. They'd already added Shaw, which kind of, took away from his impact. But, I became very fond of Shaw because they tempered her attitude. And so it had she became a good part of the team. But Root, every single episode, telling others, well, this is what's going to happen and this is what needs to happen. And come on, Harry, these events aren't going to occur without our help. And it's just so it marginalized the other members of the cast because they became obsessed with utilizing Amy Acker. So now finally Root is gone, and that is a major thing. And I like the character, but as I said, I'm just trying to explain the perspective. It isn't just about, I missed the numbers. No, I love the Samaritan storyline. I mean, the whole thing with Samaritan. In fact, I almost wanted them to take Harold just because I'm so interested in seeing a dialogue between Harold and Samaritan. That would be fascinating to me, especially since Harold was a personal friend and colleague of Arthur Claypool, who was essentially the father of Samaritan, the guy who programmed Samaritan, and had the 2 drives and everything. So he has a perspective that the others simply do not possess. So I really hope we get to see that, where he can kind of put things in perspective for Samaritan based on what his father would have wanted, since they want to bring all of these themes into it about the creator and father and everything, like with the machine and Finch. But I did not like how Root upstaged Harold's importance to the machine. Though granted, a key element of Finch is that he never wanted to see the machine as a person. He always wanted to keep those emotions in that relationship in check because of the very dangerous possibilities. But of course, now he's ready to take off the gloves, and I'm excited to see what an unleashed Harold Finch can accomplish. So I know a lot of fans are upset, wanted to see Root and Shaw develop that relationship. I have my thoughts on that. I do feel that relationship was contrived simply because Shaw constantly rejected Root. Root ignored those rejections, continued to tell her that, whether you like it or not, I'm your perfect match, and she never stopped. And I feel that it's kind of hypocritical, because if that character had been cast as a man, and so a male character who tortured Shaw in the past, eventually joined the team and constantly hit on her and constantly said, one day you're going to warm up to me and you love me, you don't want to face it. I mean, Shaw showed more attraction to that male thief in season 4 than she ever showed to Root. It's not, now they've portrayed it like, at least in the simulation in season 5, like there's this deep, eternal love between Root and Shaw. But, that's fine. Anything's possible. People do change their minds over time. But I think that was mainly done for the fans. And I understand that a lot of fans are upset that, they won't get to do more with that. However, you can already tell where they're going with this. The whole theme about we live forever. Essentially, and that's a concept I was going to cover in another video, what they're saying is very interesting. It's kind of like the the portraits of the headmasters at Hogwarts, if you follow Harry Potter, that basically capture the person's likeness and mannerisms and memories. It gets into the concept of, if you could make a digital model of a person from the perspective of others, would it essentially feel as though that person is still alive, that person is still with you? If you could interact with this digital entity and it had the memories, say, of your mother or your father or your friend, like in that movie Transcendence, if you could interact and it could tell jokes the same way and all of that, would it still feel like in some form that the person was with you? And clearly what they've done is now Root lives on inside the machine, because the idea is that in order for the machine to predict the behavior of people, because that's how it does its job, Person of Interest is ultimately, it started with the idea that a man creates a very elaborate computer program that tries to prevent acts of terrorism by detecting them before they happen essentially analyzing human behavior and projecting what people will do in the future, so that it starts to see the various warning signs. And of course, because of the computing power, it has almost infinite complexity to its decisions. So the idea is that in order for it to anticipate your actions, it must create a model. It must have an understanding of how people behave, and especially the people whom it has observed on a constant basis, the people that work with it in the show, the good guys essentially, and the bad guys. So that leads to the question, if it can model you to such an extreme degree, then in some ways it started to sort of capture your essence in digital form. And so I guess we could say that Root is still alive in a certain sense within the machine. Plus the machine has adopted Root's voice. And so of course that allows them to still keep Amy Acker involved with the production. So I thought that was very interesting, and it was clear kind of in retrospect that where they were going with that. And there is some very interesting thought experiments that can emerge from that line of reasoning. So I loved all of that, but as I said, personally, I just want to see Finch restored to this brilliant, mysterious, and dangerous man. Remember the episode with the identity thief, where Harold, he had, his glasses were off in the rain, and he was like, "You're an amateur compared to me." He had a very scary vibe in that scene, and this past episode, it was, Elias there was some foreshadowing when he said, underneath all that intellect, there's a dark side, and so I just want to see Harold shine. He set the entire thing in motion. He hired John. He took on, give him the spotlight. The creators, they loved the character of Root. They fell in love with their own creation. But please do not lose sight of the characters you already put on the chessboard. And so hopefully we can see some of that in the final episodes. But it's an amazing show. Oh, one thing that has really bothered me, Samaritan's blind spot. The hack that Root and her team added, the hard-coded changes on the 7 servers. My thing is this: there is no way that Samaritan would allow itself, even Decima, Greer wouldn't have allowed, someone at Decima, if not Samaritan itself, would have patched this by now. We're talking about all of Season 4 and all through Season 5. There is simply no way that you would, and the way you fix that is when you have one of them on camera, like Root. Multiple times, Samaritan has seen Root and known it was Root, but admitted that it could not identify her as Root. Listen, take that footage, take that face right there, and just address the hack. There's so many ways to fix that. That is your entry point. When you know that you have someone on there, simply start your changes based on the image that you detected when you knew it was that person. Who cares if the facial recognition failed? You know that there was someone in front of you. So there's just no way that Samaritan would still be crippled. They did it for practical reasons, so that the cast could move about in daylight, so that they wouldn't have to wear funny masks like in Point Break every time they do something. I understand that. They wanted people to have these aliases and these alternate identities and the professions, and they can play it for laughs. But the side of my brain, you want us to be intelligent, right? You want an intelligent audience. Well, the truth is, there is no way that Samaritan would accept something as crippling as an inability to detect the people trying to destroy it. There's just no way. But whatever, I know they wanted to give the people a chance, but I'm just saying it's just simply not plausible to me. So that's kind of where we are. Finch has decided to take off the gloves and do whatever it takes to bring down Samaritan. So I'm interested to see what plans Harold can formulate. Remember when he had conceived of the Trojan horse? that he, installed on the laptop. And I'm sure they will explore the Root and Shaw, because remember, they tried to tell you you can live on through a digital model. And so I have no doubt that there will still be moments with Root and Shaw, because Root is a part of the machine in terms of that internal model. So these were just some of my thoughts. I would love to see them do a flashback with Claypool and Samaritan, the way they, show us the early days of Finch teaching the machine. So that's all for now. Maybe I'll go back and review some other episodes just as kind of a backlog. But stand by. Should be interesting. See you guys next time. Talk to you later. I'm out.